Welcome to cost accounting class. In this particular session, I'll be looking at accounting for overheads. Let's begin by defining what overheads are. What are overheads? Overheads are just a total of all indirect costs. Overheads means total of all indirect costs. So we have indirect material cost, indirect labor cost, indirect other expenses. Those put together are called overheads. Overheads can be split into two categories. We have production overheads. These are overheads that are incurred at the factory. And we have non-production overheads. These are overheads that are incurred in terms of administration overheads, selling and distribution overheads that are incurred away from the factory, and non-production overheads. In this particular video, we are looking at overheads, and our overheads can be absorbed into unit costs of the goods that has been produced. So we're looking at how overheads can be included as part of the costs of the units that have been produced. One of the methods of including overheads into cost units is called absorption costing method. So absorption costing method, absorption costing method is simply a method of accounting for overheads, and this method is just a method of sharing out the overheads that have been incurred among the units produced. Sharing out overheads incurred among the units produced. So absorption costing method is a costing method used for accounting for overheads. Costing methods we use to account for overheads. So used for accounting for overheads. I'll use OH as a short form of overheads. So we use the absorption costing method to account for overheads. It's a method of sharing out overheads incurred among units produced. So this is simply a method of sharing out overheads incurred among units produced. Sharing out overheads incurred among units produced. That's what absorption costing is all about, among units produced. This absorption method has three stages. We have three stages of analyzing for these costs and finally absorbing the overhead costs into units produced. So the process involves three stages. So let's look at these three stages that are involved in analyzing for overheads and finally absorbing the overheads into units produced. So the three stages include, number one, allocation of costs, allocation of overheads costs, or allocation of costs. So allocation of costs is a process by which the whole costs or whole cost items are charged direct to a cost unit. The process by which the whole cost item is charged to the cost unit. So allocation is the process by which whole cost items are charged directly to a cost center. So costs that are clearly identifiable with a particular cost center are simply charged directly to that particular cost center, and this process is called allocation of costs. The second stage is the apportionment of costs. So we have apportionment stage, apportionment of costs. Apportionment simply means sharing the common cost among benefiting cost centers, sharing the common cost among the benefiting cost centers, or we can say apportionment is the process of spreading indirect costs fairly between cost centers. So process of spreading or sharing indirect costs among benefiting cost centers. Among benefiting cost centers. Take an example of costs such as rent. If the organization is paying rental costs, of course there will be a lot of cost centers within that organization or departments in an organization that will be benefiting from that particular rent cost. So apportionment is a process of spreading that rent cost, which is an overhead, among the benefiting cost centers. Of course, under apportionment, we must use appropriate cost centers. There is a question that I'll be doing in this particular video where we'll practically show how allocations are done, how apportionments are done. Apportionment must be based on an appropriate basis of apportionment. So here, under apportionment, you must pick a fair basis of apportionment or appropriate basis of apportionment. Basis of apportionment is simply what you are going to use to share the cost, to fairly share the cost. It's called basis of apportionment. Basis of apportionment. And the last stage in analyzing overheads or in having a detailed analysis of overheads, the last stage is the absorption stage. Absorption stage. Absorption of cost is the final stage where all those costs now are included into the cost units or units of the products that has been produced using, of course, an appropriate rate of absorption. This absorption rate is calculated by dividing budgeted overheads over the activity level. Activity levels are picked based on what the department is frequently using. So you can have absorption rates that are calculated either based on labor hours or based on machine hours, depending on which one is frequently used by that particular department. So this is how the process goes. Let me run through the process again, and then we look at the question. Overheads, the definition of overheads. What are overheads? Overheads are simply a total of indirect costs incurred. Overheads, total of indirect costs incurred. Absorption costing method is just a method that is used to account for overheads, and this method basically involves sharing out overheads incurred amongst units produced. The method of sharing out overheads incurred amongst units produced. There are three stages under overhead analysis. There are three stages that are there. Stage number one is the allocation of costs, which is the process by which the whole cost items or whole cost items are charged directly to a cost center. So costs that are directly identifiable with a particular cost center are charged directly like that. Then apportionment is a process of spreading out indirect costs among benefiting cost centers. and this would happen for general costs such as the cost of rent. And when you're doing an apportionment of costs, you must use an appropriate basis of apportionment. For example, if you're talking about rent, you may use a basis of apportionment such as floor area occupied or area occupied. If you're talking about canteen personnel, you might use number of employees as a basis of apportionment. So we are going to see all that in the question. If you're talking about insurance or depreciation of machines, you can use machine book value for insurances and depreciation of machines as the basis of apportionment. Then finally, you're going to do the absorption by calculating the absorption rate. Absorption rate, which is the budgeted overheads divided by the budgeted activity levels. Those activity levels can either be in terms of labor hours, budgeted labor hours, or budgeted machine hours, depending on what the department or the company is frequently using. If the department is frequently using labor hours, then we say that a department is a labor intensive department and the absorption rate will be based on labor hours. If the department is using more of machine hours, then we say that department is a capital intensive department and the absorption rate will be based on machine hours. So let me pick a question. This question, I'm getting it from a past question paper for Zika exams. This is June 2020 examination, and it was a question 3 in that particular paper. So the question reads, the following information relates to Fidelity PLC, a manufacturing company that has 2 manufacturing departments and 2 service departments. And the manufacturing departments are department 1 and 2. Service departments are department 1 and 2 as well on the other side. We have been given allocated overheads, which we are going to slot into the solution just like that, the way they are, because allocation means we are charging the whole cost item to a particular cost center. Then we have general overheads. Now, these general overheads are supposed to be apportioned. So we have indirect labor cost, heating and lighting, repair, maintenance, canteen subsidies, machine depreciation, machine insurance. All these general overheads are supposed to be apportioned, and that should be done in our stage number 2, apportioning of cost. Apportioning of cost is simply the process of spreading that indirect cost fairly between benefiting cost centers. How do we know the levels of benefit each cost center is getting? This is the reason why we are given the other part of the information down there, which tells us about these departments' levels of benefit in terms of floor area occupied by each particular cost center, direct labor hours that are worked in each particular center, indirect labor hours that are worked in each particular cost center, direct labor rates that are paid, number of staff in each particular cost center, then machine hours that are spent in those cost centers, and machine values that are machine values in those particular cost centers. Then down here, because when it comes to service cost centers, because there is no production that actually takes place in the service cost center, after apportioning all the costs, we need to reapportion the service cost centers back to the production cost centers. This is the reason why we've been given extended information here that is talking about the percentage that we're going to use to apportion the service departments. So service departments overheads are to be apportioned as follows. Service department 1, we apportion to the production cost centers or production departments in the ratio of 20 to 80, and service 2 costs we apportion in the ratio of 50 to 50, so that cost would just be sharing it equally. Then the required here down there, I think that's all we have been given here, and the question is supposed to read, we are supposed to do an overhead analysis sheet where we show how these overheads are going to be allocated, are going to be apportioned and reapportioned, and also how we are going to calculate the absorption rates. So down there, this other part of the question is separate. This one is talking about job costing. So prepare a statement showing the overhead costs of each department, including the basis of apportionment, and calculate a suitable overhead absorption rate for each department using an appropriate basis. So the first two questions are the ones we are going to work out in this particular video because they relate to overheads and of course accounting for overheads. So let's start. We have 4 departments, so you need about 6 columns to work out those things. So I'll insert a table that has got 6 columns. 6 columns. I hope this will be enough. And then we have several number of rows. So the first column is going to deal with the cost item. The cost item. The second column will show the basis of apportionment. The basis of apportionment. The third column, there will show, if you want, you can show the totals at the end. We'll show department, manufacturing department 1. So we'll say manufacturing department 1. And then we have another manufacturing department 2. Manufacturing department 2. And then we have the service department 1. And we have the service department 2. Service department 2. So the first cost that we have according to the question are simply allocated costs. Allocated costs. We have allocated costs that we are going to pick just the way they are. Allocated costs are going to be picked the way they are. So just pick 3,000, 32,400, 29,200, 12,400, and we take those figures the way they are in here. So we'll say these are simply allocated overheads. And the overheads are 32,400. The next one is 39,200. Followed by 12,400. And the last one is 12,850. That's what allocation means. That's what allocation means. We just take figures or costs the way they are and we charge them directly to that particular cost center. Allocation is the process by which the whole cost item or whole cost items are charged directly to a cost center. That's what we've done. Now, the following costs are general overheads, and they are going to be shared or apportioned using an appropriate basis of apportionment. So the first one we have is indirect labor cost. So indirect labor, that's our next item here. Indirect labor. We need to indicate our basis of apportionment for indirect labor. Look at the question again. We have this information here that helps us to pick an appropriate basis of apportionment. So for a moment, I want you to look at this information and try to think about what can be the appropriate basis of apportionment for indirect labor. Well, you guess right. Indirect labor hours. Indirect labor hours. We have 30,000 hours for manufacturing department 1 and 5,000 hours for manufacturing department 2. So we share the indirect labor cost 32,000 using those proportions. Now you remember how we work out proportions. First of all, you have to get the sum, which is 30,000 plus 5,000. Then you have 35,000. So you'll say 30,000 for manufacturing department 1 divided by 35,000 multiplied by 32,000 of that cost. That's how you share those costs. So the answer, if you say 30,000 divided by 35,000 multiplied by 32,000, you should get 27,000 to 27,429. So 27,429. 27,429. Basis of apportionment, labor hours. 30,000 divided by 35 times 32,000 of that cost, you have 27,429. 27,429. 27,429. Then the other one is the 5,000. So you say 5,000 divided by the total 35,000 multiplied by 32,000 there. Right, so 5,000 over 35 multiplied by 32,000, you should have 4,571. 4,571. The total of those two figures should give us 32,000. Next cost item. Next cost item. So we come back to this. The next cost item is heating and lighting. Heating and lighting. So what can be the best basis or fair basis of apportionment for heating and lighting? Heating and lighting. Well, you guess right, that's the floor area. So what you're going to do when you identify that heating and lighting, the best basis of apportionment that can be used is floor area. You add up the total of floor area for all the departments. So we have 2,500, 4,000, 1,000, and 500. This should give us something like 8,000. 8,000. So you say for department 1, it's 2,500 divided by 8,000 multiplied by 48,600. For department 2, 4,000 divided by 8,000 multiplied by that total cost. For department 1, service department 1, 1,000 divided by 8,000 multiplied by that cost. So let's do that. So if we do that, the cost item is heating and lighting. Heating stroke lighting. Basis of apportionment, floor area. If we begin to do the calculations there, we will have 15,188. The second one is going to be 24,300. The third one, 6,075. The third one, 3,037. 3,037. When you add those figures there, you must get 48,600. We have used floor area as the basis of apportionment for heating and lighting. Repair and maintenance cost. That's the general cost. Look down here, pick the basis of apportionment for repairs and maintenance. Repairs and maintenance, the appropriate basis of apportionment you can use here is floor area. Floor area. Anything else that we have that can be used, if the repairs were machines repairs and stuff like that, you could have used machine hours. I think the lack of details here, the repair and maintenance, probably repair and maintenance of the general buildings, general surroundings and stuff like that, you use the floor area as the basis of apportionment. So we know that the total of the floor area is 8,000, so we do the same. 25 divided by 8,000 multiplied by that cost, 4,000 by divided by 8,000 multiplied by the cost. So you do that. If you do that, these are the answers they're going to have. So we have the repairs cost, basis of apportionment. We've used floor area, so basis of apportionment, floor area, and sharing that cost. You should have 10,844, 10,844. The next one is going to be 17,350, 17,350. The next one is going to be 4,338, 4,338. The next one is going to be 2,168, 2,168, using floor area as the basis of apportionment. So you move on to the next cost item. The next cost item. So coming back to the question, the next cost item is canteen. Canteen subsidy, 5,100. Obviously, we are going to use the number of staff as the basis of apportionment for canteen. Number of staff as the basis of apportionment for canteen. So the total number of staff is 35. So you'll say 30 over 35 multiplied by the canteen subsidy cost 5,1. And then the other one is going to be 5 over 35 multiplied by the cost canteen 5,1. So if you do that, your answers here will be canteen subsidy as the cost item, canteen subsidy as the cost item. So the first one, basis of apportionment, is the number of staff. Basis of apportionment, number of staff. The first one is gonna be 4,371, 4,371, and then the other cost is gonna be 729, 729. Move on to the next cost item. Back to the question. Next cost item after canteen, we have machine depreciation. Machine depreciation, basis of apportionment for machine depreciation. The basis of apportionment, you can use machine value because depreciation is based on machine values. So machine value, we have 40,000, 200,000, 10,000. So you share it as follows. The total here is going to be 250,000. So you will say 40,000 divided by 250,000 multiplied by 10,4. 200,000 divided by 250,000 multiplied by 10,4. 10,000 divided by 250,000 multiplied by 10,4. So when you do that, these are the solutions we're going to have. So machine depreciation, basis of apportionment is book value, machine book value. So machine book value, and the first calculation there will result in 1,664, 1,664. For manufacturing department 2, it's gonna be 8,320, 8,320. Service department 1 is gonna be 416, 416. That one done. Back to the question, next cost item. The next cost item is machine insurance. So machine insurance, you can still use machine value because insurance is synonymous with machine values. So total 250,000, 40 over 250 multiplied by that cost, 200 over 250 multiplied by that cost. So we do that. So there you have machine insurance. Machine insurance, basis of apportionment, machine book value. The first calculation there will result in 1,000. Then the next one would be 5,000. The next one is going to be 250. 250. All right, so I think all costs that needed to be apportioned are done. The general overheads are all apportioned. So we need to get the total cost under each cost center or department. So all you have to do is get the total cost under machine department 1, total cost under machine department 2, and the total cost under machine department 3. Under service department 1, and the total cost under service department 2. So if you do the total costs, so let's see the total costs, adding up all those costs. Adding up all those costs. Let's see the totals that we have. So under machine department 1, we have a total of 92,896. 92,896. Under machine department 2, we have 89,470. So 89,470. Under service department 1, we have 23,479. 23,479. Under service department 2, we have 18,055. 18,055. So these are the total costs that we have. So now remember what I said. I said since there is no production that takes place in service centers or service departments, we have to take the cost for the service departments and share them to, or spread them to the manufacturing departments. Spread them to manufacturing departments. So this is what we're going to do. We just need some more rows down here. Let me just push the table down. All right, so now we come to the part of reapportionment. Reapportionment means we are now getting the service center costs and spread them to production center costs. Why? Because there is no production that takes place in the service centers. Production only takes place in the production departments or manufacturing departments. So we have to remove those costs from the service departments and spread them to manufacturing departments. Now, according to the question, we are told that this is how we are going to spread those costs. Service department 1 will take 20% of that cost and add it to manufacturing department 1. Take 80% of that cost and add it to the manufacturing department 2. So back to the solution, reapportioning service department 1. Service department 1. Basis of apportionment we've been given, that's a 20 to 80. 20 to 80 ratio. All right, so 20%, 20 over 100 multiplied by service department 1 cost, 23,479. We should get 4,696. 4,696. And there we should have 18,783. 18,783. Reapportioning Service Department 2 costs. Basis of apportionment for Service Department 2, check down there. Department 2 overheads 50-50, so we're sharing that cost half-half. So take that cost for Service Department 2 and spread it into 50-50. 50 to 50 ratio. So divide that cost by 2, you should have 9028. 9028. Instead of dealing with the 0.5, it was supposed to be 9027.5. So one can carry 28, the other one can carry 27 to make sure that the cost is not exceeding 18055. So 9027, that should be the cost there. And then we come to the totals. So total for the production departments, Now you're adding that sum there plus these two figures, that sum there plus those two figures. What will be the total costs? So you have 106,620, 106,620, and there you have 117,280, 117,280. That's the cost then. So done with the apportionment and reapportionment costs. Now let's calculate the absorption rate. Overhead absorption rate. Overhead absorption rate. The formula for overhead absorption rate will be budgeted overheads divided by budgeted activity levels. Now the question here has guided us on the should guide us on the budgeted activity levels, and we said these activity levels can either be based on the labor hours, indirect labor hours, or machine hours. So if you look at Department 1, Manufacturing Department 1, compare machine hours 2,500, labor hours, indirect labor hours 30,000. So Manufacturing Department 1 uses more of labor hours than machine hours. It's a labor intensive department. So we must calculate our overhead absorption rate based on based on labor hours, indirect labor hours, because that's what the department uses more, 30,000 of labor hours as compared to only 2,500 of machine hours. So we use labor hours. So we'll say overhead absorption rate for Manufacturing Department 1. So let's just indicate there that we're dealing with Manufacturing Department 1. Manufacturing Department 1. So overhead absorption rate is 106,620 divided by the overhead, the indirect labor hours of 30,000. That rate is going to be 3.55. So this is equals to 3.55 kwacha per labor hour. Manufacturing Department 2, overhead absorption rate we have to check compare between indirect labor hours spent in Department 2 and the machine hours spent in Department 2. So you will notice that machine hours are more than the labor hours, so we use machine hours instead. So this is going to be budgeted overheads for manufacturing Department 2, 117,280 divided by, this time around, machine hours. So divided by machine hours, 25,000. This will give us divided by 25,000, 117 divided by 25,000. So that will give us 4.69. So 4.69, this is per machine hour. And that brings us to the end of this topic and question. So we've looked at overhead analysis in a topic called accounting for overheads. We have said overheads is just the total of indirect costs, and the absorption costing method is the method that is used to account for overheads. The method is about sharing out overheads incurred among units produced, and the process takes 3 stages. The first stage is the stage of allocation of those costs, apportionment of the cost, and the calculation of absorption rate. So we've looked at the question, and we have practically looked at how allocations are done, how absorptions are calculated, absorption rates are calculated, and how the apportionment is done. Thank you.